and welcome back to Voyage of a Time Wanderer. Today I'm here to share 25 bookish facts about me. So I have seen this style of video floating around on Booktube for probably at least 5 or 6 years, and it's also a very popular post to do on book blogs, so I'm not sure who originally came up with the concept or set that it's 25 facts to share. But I thought it would be a lot of fun to include this type of video in my 12 Days of Christmas videos and be able to share some bookish facts about myself that maybe I don't typically discuss on my channel. So for fact number 1, we are going to go right back to the beginning of my reading life, and that is that I learned how to read when I was 3 years old because my mom was determined to teach me how to read before my little sister was born because she was worried maybe once the baby came, she wouldn't have the time and attention to be able to teach me how to read. So I powered through those lessons while my mom was pregnant, and because I was only 3 years old, I don't really have any memory of a time before I knew how to read. Fact number 2 is that I am a firm believer that sometimes books just come around at exactly the right moment in your life. I have a few examples of these in my own life, such as Into the Wild by John Krakauer, and Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, and it's funny how sometimes a book that I'll have put off reading for years, when I finally pick it up, it's just perfect for that very moment in my life. Fact number 3 is that I read a lot of my books from the library, whether that is physical copies from the library or ebooks or audiobooks for the library, and a lot of the classics I find online on sites like Project Gutenberg, so my physical book collection is not as large as some people that I see on Booktube. Fact number 4 is that I have a hard time marking or highlighting in books. Even my textbooks at university I didn't do a ton of annotating in, so I'm not one of those people that you see, they hold up a fiction book and they have all those beautiful tabs. It's something that I find fascinating. I watch so many like how to annotate my annotation process videos, but it's just something that I haven't really been able to embrace for myself yet, and I don't know if it really would work given how often I read books that I don't own, so I wouldn't be able to annotate. Fact number 5, I was homeschooled through elementary school and middle school, so we had a fairly large collection of nonfiction reference books, which I promptly organized by Dewey Decimal System, so my childhood bookshelves, the nonfiction section was all cataloged according to the Dewey Decimal System. Fact number 6 is probably not a huge surprise, but my favorite nostalgic reread is Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery. Fact number 7, I used to be a huge snob about audiobooks and was one of those people who never ever listened to audiobooks and would only consider myself having read something if I read it with my eyes, but that has totally changed in the past 5 years or so, and I have now absolutely fallen in love with audiobooks. I really enjoy how it expands my available reading time because I can be doing some of my other hobbies like cooking or baking, cross-stitch, puzzles, knitting, and still be getting reading time in. It's also nice kind of as a wind down towards the end of the day in bed, be able to just listen to an audiobook as I fall asleep, or when times are slower, I have kind of a monotonous task at work, it's nice to be able to have an audiobook playing through my headset when I wouldn't be able to be physically reading a book. Fact number 8 is another audiobook fact, and that is that I tend to listen to audiobooks anywhere from 1.75 to 3 times speed, depending on the topic and the narrator. I find if the author is narrating the book, they tend to speak faster than if it's a professional narrator, so if it's an author narrating their own work, it's usually more like 1.5, but if it's any typical like cozy mystery or historical fiction book, I'm probably closer to like 2.25. Fact number 9 is that I have never read the Harry Potter series, which I think is a bit of an anomaly for someone of my generation. I have read the first book once or twice and then just never really had any interest in continuing on with the series. Fact number 10 is that my bookshelves are currently sorted into 7 different categories. I have all my fiction books, which are what you see behind me in my videos, and those are categorized by author last name and then within author by series order. And then I also have my classics have their own section, my general nonfiction has its own section, My theological nonfiction has its own section. Any genealogy-related nonfiction has its own section and then is sorted out by kind of family branch or country of origin. My African nonfiction has its own section, and my African fiction, African lit, has its own section as well. Fact number 11, I recently found a list of my best friends that I had written in my childhood, and I think more than half of the names on that list were fictional characters from my favorite books. Fact number 12, Jodi Picoult was the first kind of mainstream adult fiction author that I really fell in love with. When I was in high school, I remember there was a year or two when I just read through every single book that our library had from her. Ironically, I actually haven't read a lot of her more recent releases once I graduated from high school in 2010. Fact number 13, my favorite picture book growing up was No Such Thing as Far Away, and I was a very proud 5-year-old when I managed to track down both the author and illustrator at separate literary events and got my copy signed by both of them. Fact number 14, I procrastinated for years starting my own Booktube channel. I watched Booktube videos for many, many years before I started my own channel. I did initially begin this channel in 2017, and I posted a handful of videos, like 5 or 10 videos, and then life got really busy and I put it on hiatus for another 3 years and didn't really resurrect this channel until 2020. Fact number 15, in high school I participated in NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, but I no longer really have any ambition to write my own stories. Fact number 16, one of my favorite souvenirs to pick up when I'm traveling is books. I have a copy of Julius Caesar that I picked up at the Globe Theatre after watching a performance of Julius Caesar, and I have a copy of Anne Frank's diary that I bought at the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam to list 2 examples of my bookish souvenirs. Fact number 17, one of the things that excites me the most about having children in the future is getting to read aloud all of my favorite childhood books with them, and myself and my mom have already started collecting quite a little library for them. Fact number 18, if I am reading an ebook or listening to an audiobook, I pick either the prettiest cover or the edition with the longest pages to mark as read on Goodreads, but if I'm reading the actual physical copy, I'm a stickler for marking the actual edition that I read as the book that I read. Fact number 19, as a child, I reread books a ton. There are some books that I swear no one else in my library system will have had a chance to read, because pretty much as soon as I returned them to the library, I would check them out to reread them. But as an adult, I find that I rarely, if ever, reread books. Fact number 20, I love both giving and receiving books as presents, and I have a lot of fun choosing what book I think people would appreciate as a gift, going through the books that they've already read on Goodreads and what I know about their interests. Fact number 21, I read a ton of historical fiction set during World War II when I was a child and teen. I don't know if it was just me, but it seemed like there was a ton of YA fiction when I was growing up centered around that time period. And so as a result, as an adult, I've kind of been burnt out of reading books set in that time period, and it seems like it's still so popular to publish books set during the Second World War, and so many of the kind of hyped current releases in historical fiction are set during that time period. So there are a lot of popular historical fiction titles that I haven't read for that reason, and I'm kind of starting to think that maybe I want to dip my toe back in that time period. Fact number 22, I'm really not bothered by having a large-ish physical TBR. I'm not one of those people who is desperate to have my physical TBR be close to 0, and it doesn't bother me that a lot of the books on my shelves here I haven't actually read. I didn't actually have any idea how many books were on my physical TBR until I cataloged them during quarantine last summer. And I will say I was a little bit surprised by how large the number was, but at the same time I was not motivated in the slightest to start rapidly reading through my own shelves. And I will continue to pick away at reading some of the books that I own when I'm in the mood for them, but I'm not making that a bookish goal or project for myself. Fact number 23, I read a lot of what would be considered backlist fiction. I don't really keep up with new releases. There's a couple favorite authors that I kind of have on my radar, but other than that, I just pick up books that sound interesting to me, whether they were released in the last few years or a couple decades ago. Fact number 24, I am not at all a monogamous reader, and I typically have a number of books on the go. My typical kind of sweet spot is that I typically have a physical fiction book, an audiobook, a nonfiction book and a theological nonfiction book on the go at the same time, so it's not uncommon for me to have at least 4 books that I am actively currently reading. And finally, for fact 25, I will never dog-ear pages in a book, but I am someone who uses kind of whatever I have on hand as a bookmark. Sometimes that means it's an actual pretty real bookmark. Sometimes that means it's a receipt, a gum wrapper, or a post-it note. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little more about my bookish life. Thanks for watching, and until next time, enjoy wandering through the pages of a good book. Bye.